My name is Dominic, and I am 57 years old. 3 weeks ago, I sold my construction company for $60 million. 32 years of blood, sweat, and broken bones finally paying off. I wanted to celebrate with the people I love most, my children. So I took them to the finest restaurant in the city. The chandeliers sparkled, the wine flowed, and then the waiter leaned in close and whispered something that made my heart stop. "Sir, your daughter just spiked your drink." What I did next changed everything. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country. And if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you loved, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Stay with me because what I did next, well, let us just say, my daughter never saw it coming. To understand why that moment shattered me, you need to know where I came from. I was not born into money. Nobody handed me anything. I grew up in a small house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The kind of house where the winter wind came through the walls no matter how much plastic wrap my mother taped over the windows. My father worked at the steel mill, came home every night smelling like metal and exhaustion. My mother worked the night shift as a nurse at the county hospital. I barely saw her some weeks. We did not have much, but we had each other. At least until I turned 18. That was the year my father died. A crane malfunction at the mill. They said he did not suffer, but I never believed them. The company gave us a check for $10,000 and a letter expressing their condolences. $10,000 for a man's life. That was what they thought he was worth. But the real kick in the teeth came after. Turns out my father had been borrowing money to keep us afloat. Medical bills from when my mother got sick the year before. Repairs on the car. Groceries. By the time we buried him, we owed $32,000 to 3 different creditors. I was supposed to start college that fall. I had a partial scholarship to Penn State, nothing fancy, but it was something. I was going to be the first person in my family to get a degree. But the day after my father's funeral, I called the admissions office and told them I was not coming. Instead, I got a job at a construction site across town. I started at the bottom, hauling bricks, mixing cement, carrying lumber up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken and nobody wanted to fix it. My hands cracked and bled every day that first winter. I would come home, soak them in warm water, and wrap them in the same bandages my mother brought home from the hospital. 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. That was my life. But I never complained. I knew what I was working for. I was working to pay off my father's debts. I was working to keep my mother in her home, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I was working towards something bigger. I just did not know what it was yet. By the time I was 23, I had paid off every penny my father owed. I had also learned everything there was to know about building things. Framing, plumbing, electrical, concrete work, roofing. I could do it all. And I realized something important. The guys running these construction sites were not smarter than me. They just had the courage to start something. So at 25 years old, with $6,000 I had saved and a used pickup truck that broke down every other week, I started my own company. Hartley Construction. 3 employees. Me, a guy named Ronnie, who I met on a job site, and his cousin Pete, who could barely swing a hammer, but worked harder than anyone I ever knew. The first year was brutal. We took every job we could find, no matter how small. Patching driveways, building backyard decks, renovating kitchens for old ladies who paid us in installments because they were on fixed incomes. Some months I did not pay myself at all. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner and slept on a mattress on the floor of my apartment. But slowly, things started to change. Word got around that Hartley Construction did good work at fair prices. We finished on time. We did not cut corners. And I treated every client like they were doing me a favor by hiring us because they were. By my 3rd year in business, I had 12 employees. By my 5th year, I had 30. And somewhere in between, I met the woman who would change my life forever. Her name was Gloria. I first saw her at a construction site in downtown Pittsburgh. We were building a small office complex, and she was the accountant for the company that had hired us. She walked onto that site in a navy blue dress and sensible heels, clipboard in hand, and I swear to you, I forgot how to speak. She was not trying to be beautiful. That was what got me. She just was. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Reading glasses perched on her nose. A smile that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even when it was not. I asked her out 7 times before she finally said yes. She told me later that she had been watching me work, seeing how I treated my crew, how I talked to the clients, how I stayed late to make sure everything was right. She wanted to make sure I was who I seemed to be. Our first date was at a diner 3 blocks from the construction site. I ordered a burger and fries. She ordered a Caesar salad. We talked for 4 hours until the waitress gently told us they were closing. I walked her to her car in the rain, holding my jacket over her head, because she had forgotten her umbrella. 2 years later, we were married in a small ceremony at her parents' church. 43 guests. Her mother cried. My mother cried. I probably would have cried too, if Ronnie had not punched me in the shoulder and told me to keep it together. Harper came along when I was 25, a baby girl with Gloria's dark hair and my stubborn chin. I held her in the delivery room and made a promise I have never forgotten. I told her I would give her everything I never had: a safe home, a good education, a life without fear. 4 years later, Ethan arrived. A quiet baby who rarely cried. He would just look at you with those big brown eyes like he was trying to figure out the whole world. Those were the good years. The best years, really. Gloria would wait up for me no matter how late I came home. She would have dinner warming in the oven and a cold beer in the refrigerator. We would sit at the kitchen table and talk about the kids, about the business, about everything and nothing. She was my partner in ways I cannot fully explain. When I had doubts, she believed in me. When I wanted to give up, she reminded me why I started. And when I made mistakes, which I made plenty, she never let me beat myself up for too long. I will be the first to admit that I was not a perfect father. I missed things. School plays, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences. I told myself I was building something for them, that all the sacrifice would be worth it in the end. Gloria always covered for me. She would take videos of the performances and show them to me when I got home. She would tell the kids that Daddy was working hard because he loved them so much. Maybe she was right. Maybe that is true. But looking back now, I wonder if I was fooling myself. Maybe I was just scared. Scared that if I slowed down, everything would fall apart. Scared that I would end up like my father, broken and in debt and dying too young. So I kept working. 60-hour weeks turned into 70. The company grew. 10 employees became 50. 50 became 100. We built shopping centers, residential complexes, medical facilities. Hartley Construction became a name people recognized. And then last year, something unexpected happened. A major development corporation approached me with an offer. They wanted to buy Hartley Construction. The number they proposed was so large I asked them to repeat it 3 times, just to make sure I heard correctly. $60 million. I did not say yes right away. I needed time to think. This company was my life's work. It was everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed for. Selling it felt like giving away a piece of myself. But Gloria had been gone for 8 years by then, and suddenly all those things I had been working toward did not seem as important anymore. What was the point of building an empire if I had no one to share it with? My children were grown. The grandchildren I had hoped for had not arrived. I was 57 years old, and I realized I wanted to spend whatever time I had left actually living, not just working. So I said yes. I sold the company, and I decided to celebrate the only way that made sense to me. I would gather my children together for a dinner at the finest restaurant in the city, and I would tell them what I had planned for the future. A future where all of us would be taken care of. I had no idea that future was about to explode in my face. Gloria died 8 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 14. I was there every single day. I rearranged my entire schedule, delegated everything I could, and spent as much time at her bedside as the nurses would allow. We talked about everything. Our first date at that diner. The night Harper was born. The vacation we took to Cape Cod when the kids were small, how Ethan got stung by a jellyfish and cried for 3 hours. Near the end, she could barely speak. But on her last night, she squeezed my hand and looked at me with those beautiful eyes I had fallen in love with 30 years before. "Take care of the children," she whispered. "And Dominic, do not forget to take care of yourself." Then she closed her eyes, and she was gone. The funeral was on a Tuesday. It rained all morning, then cleared up just as we lowered her casket into the ground. Harper cried so hard I thought she might collapse. Ethan stood like a statue, not a single tear on his face, but I could see the devastation in his eyes. I felt like part of me had been buried with her. In the weeks after Gloria's death, I tried to be strong for the kids. I threw myself back into work because I did not know what else to do. But the house felt empty. Every room held a memory of her. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, her favorite coffee mug in the cabinet, her garden still full of the flowers she had planted the spring before she got sick. And slowly, without me fully noticing, at first something began to change in my family. Harper was 32 when her mother died. Already a lawyer at a prestigious firm downtown. Already married to a man named Bradley, who I never quite warmed to but kept my mouth shut about, because it was not my place to interfere. In the months after the funeral, Harper started calling more often. At first I thought it was grief that she needed her father. But the conversations always seemed to circle back to the same topics. How was the business doing? Had I thought about retirement? What were my plans for the future? Then the requests began. Nothing too alarming at first. She needed help with a down payment on a new car. Bradley's job was in transition, and they were a little short on rent one month. Then it was a vacation they could not quite afford. Then it was a designer handbag she just had to have. I wrote the checks without complaint. She was my daughter. That is what fathers do. But something felt different. The warmth in her voice seemed forced. She rarely asked how I was really doing. Our conversations became transactions. She would call, ask for something, thank me when I said yes, and hang up. One evening, about 2 years after Gloria passed, I dropped by Harper's apartment unannounced. I had been in the neighborhood and thought I would surprise her with dinner. I still had a key, so I let myself in. I heard voices from the bedroom. Harper and Bradley. They did not know I was there. I should have announced myself. Instead, I froze. Bradley was saying something about money, about how they needed more, about how my old man routine was getting tiresome. And then Harper said something that felt like a knife slipping between my ribs. "Do not worry. The old man will not live forever. I stood there in that hallway, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. I told myself I had misheard. I told myself she must have been joking, that it was dark humor, that I was being paranoid. I backed out of that apartment without making a sound. I never mentioned what I heard. I buried it deep and tried to forget. But I never truly did. Meanwhile, Ethan had taken a very different path. He had graduated with a teaching degree and taken a job at a school for children with disabilities. The pay was modest, barely $40,000 a year. But when I asked him about it, his whole face lit up. "Dad, you should see these kids," he told me once. "They work so hard just to do things most people take for granted. And when they finally succeed, when they finally get something right, the look in their eyes, there is nothing like it. I would not trade this job for anything." I respected him for that. I was proud of him, actually. But Harper saw things differently. She called him a failure to his face more than once. She mocked his salary, his apartment, his second-hand car. Ethan never fought back. He would just go quiet retreat into himself, let her words wash over him like he was used to the cruelty. It worried me, that dynamic. But I told myself siblings were complicated. Gloria had always been the peacemaker between them. Without her, maybe they just needed time to find their own balance. I should have looked closer. I should have seen what was happening beneath the surface. But I was too busy working, too busy building, too busy telling myself that everything would work out in the end. Some lessons you learn the hard way. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. I put on the charcoal gray suit Gloria had picked out for me 5 years before she died. I wore the silver watch she had given me for our 25th anniversary, the one with our initials engraved on the back. Looking in the mirror, I could almost hear her voice telling me I looked handsome. The Sterling House was everything you would expect from a restaurant where the appetizers cost $50 each. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. The tables were draped in white linen, each one adorned with a single red rose in a delicate vase. The walls were dark mahogany lined with oil paintings of European countryside scenes. The air smelled of aged steak and expensive wine. I had reserved a private table in the back corner. I wanted this evening to be special. I wanted to look at my children, raise a glass, and tell them about my plans. My plan was simple. I was going to tell them that I intended to split my assets now while I was still alive. No waiting until I was gone. No fighting over a will. I would give each of them a substantial sum immediately and establish trust funds that would provide for them and their families for generations. I wanted to see their faces when I told them. I wanted to share this moment with the people who mattered most. Harper and Bradley arrived first. She was wearing a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Bradley was in a tailored navy suit, looking every bit the financial consultant he claimed to be. Something about them seemed different that night. They were both smiling, laughing, attentive in ways they rarely were anymore. Harper complimented my suit. Bradley shook my hand firmly and called me Dad for the first time I could remember. I should have been suspicious. Instead, I was just grateful. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe the family was finally coming together. Ethan arrived about 15 minutes later. He was wearing slacks and a button-down shirt, the nicest clothes he owned, but his face was tight, his shoulders hunched. He barely looked anyone in the eye as he sat down. I reached over and squeezed his arm. "Everything okay, son?" He nodded without meeting my gaze. "Yeah, Dad. Just tired. Long week at work." I let it go, but something nagged at me. Ethan was a terrible liar. The waiter came to take our drink orders. His name tag said Marcus. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes, the kind of presence that made you feel comfortable immediately. I ordered a whiskey neat. Harper ordered a martini. Bradley ordered a bourbon. Ethan asked for just water. We made small talk while we waited for our drinks. Harper asked about my plans now that I had sold the company. I told her I was thinking about traveling, maybe finally taking that trip to Italy that Gloria and I had always talked about. "That sounds wonderful, Dad," Harper said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You deserve to relax after all these years," Bradley chimed in. "Absolutely. You have worked harder than anyone I know. It is time to enjoy the fruits of your labor." I remember feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe I had been too hard on them. Maybe I had let my suspicions poison my perception. The drinks arrived. Marcus set my whiskey in front of me with a slight nod. The amber liquid caught the light from the chandeliers above. I excused myself to use the restroom before we ordered food. When I came back, everyone was chatting pleasantly. Harper was laughing at something Bradley had said. Ethan was staring at his water glass like he was trying to count the bubbles. I sat down and reached for my whiskey. That is when it happened. Marcus appeared at my elbow, a white towel draped over his arm. He leaned in close, pretending to adjust the napkin on my lap. His voice was barely a whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. "Sir, your daughter just put something in your drink when you went to the restroom. Please do not drink it." Time stopped. I looked at the whiskey glass in front of me. The liquid looked exactly the same as before. No color change, no visible particles, nothing to suggest that anything was wrong. Then I looked at Harper. She was watching me with those bright eyes, smiling that perfect smile. Waiting. Bradley was looking at me too. They were both waiting. Everything clicked into place. The excessive friendliness, the sudden interest in my well-being, the questions about my finances, that conversation I had overheard 2 years ago. The old man will not live forever. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The world tilted slightly. I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself, but I did not let my face show anything. Because in that moment, I made a decision. I was not going to confront her. Not yet. I needed to know the full extent of what she had planned. I needed to understand exactly what my daughter was capable of. So I did something that went against every instinct I had. I picked up the whiskey glass. I brought it to my lips, and I pretended to drink. In reality, the liquid went into the napkin on my lap. I coughed slightly, as if the whiskey had gone down rough, and used that moment to hide what I had done. Then I set the glass down 3/4 empty. I waited. After about 10 minutes, I began my performance. I blinked heavily, as if my eyes were having trouble focusing. I slurred a word or two. I rubbed my forehead like I was fighting off a headache. "Dad, are you okay?" Harper asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "I am fine," I said, letting my speech grow more garbled. "Just feeling a little dizzy. Must be the whiskey hitting me harder than usual." Harper and Bradley exchanged a glance. A quick one, but I caught it. There was no concern in that look. There was satisfaction. Ethan stood up, genuine worry on his face. "Dad, you do not look good. Maybe we should call a doctor." Harper reached over and pulled Ethan back into his seat. "He is fine, Ethan. Just had a bit too much to drink. You know how he gets." "I do not get like this. I have been drinking whiskey for 40 years. 2 fingers of Jameson does not make me slur my words. But I let it go. I let them think their plan was working." I slumped forward, resting my head on my arms. To anyone watching, I would have looked like a man who had simply had too much to drink at a celebration. Embarrassing, but not alarming. But I was not unconscious. I was listening. And what I heard next broke my heart into pieces I am still trying to put back together. With my head down on the table, my eyes closed, my body perfectly still, I listened. Harper's voice was the first thing I heard clearly. She was speaking quietly, but not as quietly as she should have been. It worked faster than I thought. The doctor said it would take at least an hour. Bradley's response came quickly. Good. How long until we can get him to sign the power of attorney? I have the documents in my purse. We will do it at the hospital. They will think he is just confused from the medication. I felt like I had been dropped into ice water. My daughter, my firstborn child, the little girl I had held in the delivery room and promised the world to, was plotting to take everything from me. Harper continued, her voice calm and businesslike, like she was discussing a real estate transaction instead of her father's destruction. The plan is simple. We keep giving him the medication for a few weeks. Small doses, just enough to make him confused. Then we have him evaluated by a psychiatrist that Bradley knows. They will declare him mentally incompetent. We file for conservatorship, take control of his assets, and then we decide what to do with him. What do you mean, decide what to do with him? Bradley asked. There is a facility in Vermont, very discreet. They specialize in elderly patients with dementia. We tell everyone that Dad had a sudden decline after selling his business, the stress of retirement, the loneliness after Mom died. People will believe it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table and demand to know how she could even consider such a thing. But I stayed perfectly still. I needed to hear everything. Bradley spoke again. And what about Ethan? There was a pause. Then Harper laughed, a cold sound I had never heard from her before. Ethan, he will get nothing. He is too stupid to do anything about it anyway. He can barely pay his own rent. You think he is going to hire a lawyer to fight us? He does not have the spine. I heard Ethan's voice then shaking. Harper, what are you doing? This is Dad, our father, the man who paid for everything we have. Keep your voice down, Harper snapped, and sit there and be quiet. You have a choice to make, little brother. You stay silent and get a small cut, maybe enough to pay off your car and buy some new clothes, or you open your mouth and I make sure everyone finds out about that little incident at your school. My blood ran cold. What incident? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. That was different. I paid the money back. Does not matter. You took money from the school fund without authorization, even if it was to help one of your precious students. If the school board finds out, you lose your job. Your career is over. Your reputation is destroyed. Is that what you want? Silence. Then so quietly, I almost missed it. I heard Ethan say, no. Then sit down, shut up, and let the adults handle this. I lay there with my eyes closed, feeling tears slide down the side of my face onto the white tablecloth. My daughter had threatened her own brother. She had blackmailed him into silence, and she was planning to drug me, steal my money, and lock me away in some facility where no one would hear from me again. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a spur-of-the-moment mistake. This was a calculated, premeditated plan to destroy me. And the worst part, Gloria was not here to tell me what to do. I was completely alone. Except I was not. Marcus, the waiter, reappeared at the table. His voice was calm but firm. Is everything all right here? I noticed the gentleman seems unwell. I am going to call an ambulance. That will not be necessary, Harper said quickly. We are his family. We will take him to the hospital ourselves. I am sorry, ma'am, but it is restaurant policy. Anytime a guest appears to be in medical distress, we are required to contact emergency services. The ambulance is already on its way. I heard Harper's intake of breath sharp and frustrated. Bradley muttered something under his breath, but there was nothing they could do. Marcus had outmaneuvered them. I later learned that Marcus had done more than just call an ambulance. He had also contacted the police, and he had been recording our table's conversation ever since he first noticed Harper slip something into my drink. Some angels do not have wings. They carry serving trays and wear name tags. When the paramedics arrived, I let them load me onto a stretcher. I kept my eyes closed. I answered their questions with mumbled, incoherent responses. I let them take my vital signs and shine lights in my eyes. Harper and Bradley followed in their car. Ethan rode in the ambulance with me, holding my hand. I could feel him trembling. At the hospital, a doctor examined me and found nothing seriously wrong. My vital signs were stable. My cognitive functions, when I finally came around, were completely normal. But the blood test told a different story. Benzodiazepine, a powerful sedative, in a dose high enough to cause significant confusion and memory impairment. If I had actually drunk the whiskey, I would have been in serious trouble. The doctor, a kind-faced man named Dr. Raymond Cho, looked at me with grave concern. "Mr. Hartley, someone tried to drug you tonight. Do you have any idea who might have done this?" I looked at Harper, who was standing in the corner of the room, her face pale. She met my gaze and immediately looked away. "Yes," I said quietly. "I have a pretty good idea." But I was not ready to say it out loud. Not yet. I told the doctor I was not sure that I needed time to think. The police took my statement and the sample from my drink. They said they would be in touch. Harper and Bradley left quickly after that, claiming they needed to get home. Ethan stayed. When we were finally alone, I opened my eyes fully and looked at my son. Really looked at him for the first time in years. "I heard everything, Ethan," I said. "Everything she said. Everything she threatened you with." He broke down then. Tears streamed down his face as he gripped my hand. "Dad, I am so sorry. I should have warned you. I should have stopped her, but I was scared. She said she would ruin me. I did not know what to do." I pulled him close and held him the way I had when he was a boy. "I know, son. I know. But we are going to fix this. Together." That night, lying in that hospital bed, I made a decision. My daughter had tried to destroy me. She had planned my humiliation, my imprisonment, my death. And she had done it all for money. Money that I had earned with my own 2 hands. Money that I had planned to give her freely out of love. If Harper wanted a war, I would give her one. But I would fight on my terms. And I would win. The next morning, I checked myself out of the hospital against medical advice. The doctors wanted to keep me for observation, but I had work to do. My first call was to Theodore Harrington. Ted had been my lawyer and one of my closest friends for over 30 years. We had met when I was just starting out, when Hartley Construction was 3 guys and a dream. He had helped me navigate every contract, every deal, every legal challenge I had ever faced. And he was one of the few people in this world I trusted completely. I told him everything. The dinner, the whiskey, Marcus and his warning, the conversation I had overheard, Harper's plan, Ethan's blackmail. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Dominic," Ted finally said, "I have known Harper since she was a little girl. I was at her baptism. I cannot believe she would do something like this." "Neither could I," I said. "But she did, and I need your help." What do you want to do? I want to know the full extent of this. I want to know how long she has been planning it, who else is involved, and what else they have been hiding from me. And then I want to make sure it never happens again. Ted agreed to help. He connected me with a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Charles Mercer. Over the next 2 weeks, Mercer dug into Harper and Bradley's lives with surgical precision. What he found was worse than I imagined. The plan to drug me and steal my money had been in development for 6 months, dating back to the day I first announced I was considering selling the company. Harper had started researching conservatorship laws immediately. She had contacted 3 different psychiatrists looking for one who would be willing to help her have me declared incompetent. Bradley, meanwhile, had his own secrets. He owed $300,000 to a private gambling operation. The kind of operation that does not send polite reminder letters when you miss a payment. They had given him until the end of the year to pay up. Without my money, he was a dead man walking. The investigation also revealed something else. Harper had been in contact with a real estate developer who was interested in the family home, the house where Gloria and I had raised our children. She had already gotten it appraised. She was planning to sell it the moment she had control of my assets. The house where Ethan took his first steps. The house where we celebrated Christmas every year, even when money was tight. The house where Gloria died. Harper was going to sell it all without a second thought. Maureen, Gloria's younger sister, provided the final piece of the puzzle. Harper had visited her a few months earlier, asking casual questions about Gloria's will and my financial situation. At the time, Maureen thought it was just curiosity. Now she realized it had been reconnaissance. "Dominic, I am so sorry," Maureen said when she called me, her voice breaking. "If I had known what she was planning, I would have told you immediately." "It is not your fault," I told her. "Nobody could have imagined this." But now I knew the truth, and I had a plan. I invited both of my children to the house the following Saturday. I told them I wanted to discuss the future, that I had made some decisions about my estate and wanted to share them. Harper agreed immediately, her voice cheerful and eager on the phone. Bradley would be there too, of course. Ethan hesitated, but eventually said yes. They thought they were coming to claim their prize. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The day before the meeting, I worked with Ted to prepare everything. We installed hidden cameras throughout the living room. We had a court stenographer and a notary public, waiting in the study ready to document everything. Marcus agreed to come as well, both as a witness and as a guest. After everything he had done for me, he had earned his place at the table. I also had one more surprise in store. A folder containing every piece of evidence Mercer had gathered. Bank records, phone logs, emails, testimony from the psychiatrists Harper had approached. A statement from the gambling operation about Bradley's debt. Everything was ready. All I had to do was wait. Saturday arrived gray and cold. A light rain fell as Harper's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as she stepped out dressed impeccably as always. Bradley followed, carrying an umbrella for her, like the perfect gentleman. Ethan's old Honda pulled up a few minutes later. He walked slowly to the door, his shoulders hunched, his eyes on the ground. I let them in and led them to the living room. Coffee was already laid out on the table, along with some pastries that nobody would touch. Harper looked around the room, her eyes lingering on a few spots where I knew she could not see the cameras. "This is nice, Dad. Very cozy." "Thank you," I said. "Please sit down. I have a lot to tell you." Harper and Bradley sat on the couch. Ethan took a chair in the corner as far from his sister as possible. I remained standing. "Before we begin," I said, "I have one question for you, Harper, and I want you to answer honestly." She smiled that perfect smile. "Of course, Dad. Anything." What was in my drink that night at the restaurant? The smile faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. I do not know what you mean. You must have had too much whiskey. You know how you get. I shook my head slowly. I do not get that way. I never have. And I have a toxicology report that says there was benzodiazepine in my blood that night. A lot of it. Harper's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. Someone at the restaurant must have spiked your drink. It happens. You should sue them. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. Marcus, the waiter who served us that night, saw you put something in my glass while I was in the restroom. He recorded the conversation at our table after I pretended to pass out. I pressed play. Harper's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. It worked faster than I thought. The doctor said it would take at least an hour. Bradley's voice followed. How long until we can get him to sign the power of attorney? And then Harper again. I have the documents in my purse. We will do it at the hospital. They will think he is just confused. I stopped the recording. The room was silent. Harper stared at me, her face white, her hands trembling. Bradley looked like he wanted to run but did not know where to go. Dad. Harper started, I can explain. No, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You cannot explain. There is no explanation for what you tried to do. You plotted to drug me, to steal my money, to lock me away in a facility while you sold everything I worked my entire life to build. I took a step closer, looking directly into her eyes. I built my business with my bare hands. I worked 60-hour weeks so you could go to the best schools. I missed your dance recitals and your graduations because I was trying to give you a better life. And this is how you repay me. Harper started to cry, but I had seen her tears before. I knew what they really meant. You are not crying because you are sorry, I said. You are crying because you got caught. I turned to Bradley. And you. You owe $300,000 to a gambling operation. You were going to use my money to pay off your debts. Did you think I would never find out? Bradley said nothing. His face had gone from pale to gray. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan stood up. My quiet, timid son, who had spent his whole life in his sister's shadow, walked across the room and stood beside me. Harper, he said, his voice shaking but clear. You need to stop. This is Dad. He has never been anything but good to us. Even when he was working, he called every night. He paid for my college. He paid for your law school. He paid for your wedding. What have you ever done for him? Harper's eyes narrowed. Remember what I said, Ethan. One word about this, and I will make sure everyone knows about your little incident at work. Ethan took a deep breath. I do not care anymore. The money I borrowed was to pay for surgery for one of my students, a little boy whose parents could not afford the procedure. I paid every penny back within 2 months. If the school board wants to fire me for that, then let them. But I am done being scared of you. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Dad, I am sorry I did not say anything sooner. I was a coward, but I will not be anymore. I pulled my son into my arms and held him tight. It takes courage to admit that, I said. I am proud of you. The door to the study opened and Ted walked out, followed by the notary public and the court stenographer. Behind them was Marcus, his face solemn. Harper. Ted said, based on the evidence we have gathered, you and Bradley will be facing charges for attempted assault with a controlled substance and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The police are on their way. Harper's face crumpled. Dad, please. I am your daughter. I looked at her for a long moment. This was the little girl I had held in the delivery room. The little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories. The little girl I would have given my life to protect. But that little girl was gone. In her place was someone I did not recognize. "You stopped being my daughter," I said quietly, "the moment you decided my life was worth less than my money." That was 6 months ago. Harper and Bradley were arrested that afternoon. They were charged with multiple felonies and released on bail. Their trial is set for next spring. Based on the evidence, Ted tells me they will likely serve significant prison time. Harper has already lost her law license. Bradley's career is finished. I do not take pleasure in any of this. There is no joy in watching your own child be destroyed, even when they brought it upon themselves. But I had to protect myself. I had to stand up for my own dignity. And I had to make sure that what Harper tried to do to me could never happen to anyone else in my family. I changed my will. The bulk of my estate will now go to Ethan, who has proven himself to be a man of integrity and compassion. A significant portion will also go to charitable causes that Gloria and I believed in: education for underprivileged children, medical research support for families dealing with cancer. I also established a foundation in Gloria's name. The Gloria Hartley Foundation provides scholarships and resources for children with disabilities, the same children Ethan has dedicated his life to helping. Ethan serves on the board. It is something we do together now, father and son, building something meaningful. As for Harper, I left instructions that if she ever genuinely reforms, if she serves her sentence, seeks help, and demonstrates real change, there will be a small trust available to help her rebuild her life. I do not expect her to take this path, but I wanted to leave the door open just a crack. Because even after everything, part of me still remembers that little girl who used to climb into my lap. Marcus and I have become friends. We meet for coffee once a week and talk about life. He told me his story, how his own father was destroyed by a financial scam perpetrated by people the old man trusted. When Marcus saw what Harper was doing to me, he could not stand by and let it happen. He risked his job to save a stranger. That kind of courage is rare in this world. Maureen comes to visit often. We sit in Gloria's garden and talk about the old times, about the woman we both loved. Sometimes I can almost feel Gloria there with us, listening, smiling. And Ethan has flourished. Without his sister's shadow looming over him, he has become more confident, more outspoken. He recently received an award from the school district for his work with disabled students. When they called his name and he walked up to receive the plaque, I was sitting in the front row, clapping harder than anyone. That night after the ceremony, we went out for dinner at a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, just good food and good company. "Dad," Ethan said halfway through his spaghetti, "I never thanked you properly for believing in me, for giving me a second chance even after I failed you." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You never failed me, son. You made a mistake and you fixed it. That is not failure. That is growth. And I could not be more proud of the man you have become." He smiled, and for a moment I saw Gloria's smile in his face. The healing is not complete. I do not know if it ever will be. Some wounds go too deep. Some betrayals leave scars that never fully fade. But I have found peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of understanding. I know now that love is not enough to change someone who does not want to be changed. I know that money can reveal the truth about people, showing you who they really are when they think they have something to gain. And I know that family is not just about blood. It is about loyalty, respect, and the willingness to stand by each other when things get hard. Yesterday I visited Gloria's grave. I do this every Sunday, now rain or shine. I bring fresh flowers and sit on the bench beside her headstone. Gloria. I said I tried my best. I know I was not perfect, but I loved our children with everything I had. I am sorry I could not protect Harper from herself, but I found something else. I found that Ethan has your heart, your kindness, your strength, and I found that there are still good people in this world, people who will help a stranger just because it is the right thing to do. I sat there for a long time, feeling the autumn breeze on my face. Then I spoke again. I forgive her, Gloria. I do. Not because she deserves it, but because carrying that anger was killing me. I choose peace. I choose to remember the good times, even if they feel like they happened to someone else. And I choose to keep living, really living, for whatever time I have left. The wind rustled the leaves above me. Maybe it was just the weather. Maybe it was something more. I like to think Gloria heard me. If you are watching this and you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know something. The pain is real. The anger is justified. But do not let it consume you. Do not let the people who hurt you take away your peace. Some people will love you for who you are. Others will love you for what you have. The trick is knowing the difference before it is too late. I learned that lesson at 57 years old, sitting in a fancy restaurant with a poisoned drink in front of me. But here is the thing. I would rather know the truth and be alone than live a lie surrounded by people who wish I were dead. And to my daughter Harper, wherever you are right now, I want you to know this. I still love you. I always will. But love does not mean I have to let you destroy me. Maybe one day you will understand that. Until then, I will be here, building, growing, living. Because that is what Gloria would have wanted. And that is what I deserve. Now I have a question for you, the person watching this right now. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty to family and protecting yourself? Have you ever discovered that someone you loved was not who you thought they were? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear from you. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that you are not alone, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future stories. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I appreciate every single one of you. Take care of yourselves out there. Protect your peace. Know your worth. And never let anyone make you feel like you are worth less than you are. Until next time.